There's a hush in the grand hall of Camelot tonight, a stillness thick with anticipation as torchlight flickers against ancient stone. Can you feel it? The weight of destiny pressing down like the cool metal of a knight's armor, the whisper of a kingdom's fate hanging in the air, wherever you're listening from, whether it's the quiet hours past midnight or the golden light of dawn. We'd love to know what time your own journey into this legend begins. Let us know in the comments below, because tonight we step into a story where courage and shadow collide. Picture this: Sir Gawain, his armor gleaming like captured starlight, kneels before King Arthur, his voice steady as he vows to recover the lost sword of virtue. The court holds its breath. This isn't just a quest. It's the thread that could unravel Camelot's peace or weave it stronger than ever. The sword of virtue isn't merely steel and hilt. It's the heartbeat of the realm, a relic said to pulse with the honor of every knight who's ever sworn to protect it. But here's the twist. It lies hidden deep within the forest of shadows, a place where even the bravest souls have vanished without a trace. The air there is thick with enchantments, the trees murmuring secrets in languages no living man understands. Gawain knows the risks. He's heard the tales of knights who rode in and never rode out, their names now just echoes in the wind. Yet as he mounts his steed, there's something else in the air tonight, an ancient prophecy, so faint it's almost a sigh, stirring the leaves at his feet. What would you do if your kingdom's future rested on your shoulders? That's the question Gawain carries with him as the gates of Camelot close behind. This isn't just a story about a sword or a forest. It's about the moments that define us, the choices that split paths between legend and oblivion. And as we follow Gawain into the unknown, we're not just observers. We're right there beside him, feeling the chill of the shadowed path, the weight of every decision. So settle in, because this is where the true tale begins, where light meets darkness, and where the echoes of an old prophecy start to sound an awful lot like destiny calling. The mist clings to Gawain's cloak like a second skin, as his horse picks its way through the tangled undergrowth of the forest of shadows. Every breath hangs white in the air, and the silence is so deep, it rings in his ears. No bird song, no rustle of creatures, just the occasional creak of ancient branches swaying unseen above. Then a sound cuts through the stillness, a ragged gasp, the scrape of fabric against leaves. A figure stumbles into the path ahead, a peasant clutching his side where dark blood seeps through his tunic. His eyes widen at the sight of Gawain's sigil, and he collapses to his knees, whispering of horrors no mortal should face. Spectral knights, he says, their armor black as void, their swords singing with the voices of the dead. They guard the sword of virtue, and they do not sleep. Gawain's fingers tighten on his reins. The peasant's words coil around him like the forest's own whispers, a warning and a test woven together. He could ride on leave the man to find his own way back, while the quest still burns fresh in his veins. Every second counts. The prophecy doesn't wait for the wounded. But then the peasant coughs, a wet and broken sound, and Gawain's choice crystallizes in an instant. He dismounts, his knees sinking into the damp earth as he tears a strip from his own cloak to bind the man's wound. There's no grand speech, no hesitation, just the quiet certainty of a knight who knows that honor isn't found in glory alone, but in the moments between. With careful hands, he helps the peasant onto his horse and sends him back toward the forest's edge, with a murmured blessing. The moment the peasant vanishes into the mist, something shifts. The air shivers, and for the briefest instant, a silver stag stands at the edge of Gawain's vision, its antlers like woven moonlight, its eyes knowing. Then it's gone, leaving only the faintest imprint of hoof prints in the moss. The Lady of the Lake's favor is a subtle thing, but Gawain feels it like a warmth against his skin. The forest is watching, and perhaps, just perhaps, it remembers the worth of a knight who chooses mercy over haste. The ground beneath Gawain's boots grows unstable as the forest path narrows, the trees leaning inward like sentinels, judging his every step. Ahead, the trail ends abruptly at a ravine, its depths swallowed by darkness. The only way forward is a bridge so ancient its ropes fray at the slightest touch, its wooden planks cracked and groaning under the weight of centuries. One wrong step, and it would crumble into the abyss. Gawain hesitates, but then the air chills, and a figure materializes at the bridge's center. Clad in armor that seems to drink in the light, the spectral knight lifts a blade that hums with a mournful, otherworldly resonance. None shall pass, it intones, its voice like wind through a battlefield of forgotten dead, unless they prove their honor not by steel, but by the truth of their heart. Gawain's hand instinctively goes to his sword, but something in the specter's hollow gaze gives him pause. This isn't a foe to be struck down. It's a trial, woven from the very fabric of Camelot's oldest codes. He remembers the words of his mentor, Sir Ector. A knight's greatest weapon is not his arm, but his understanding. Steadying his breath, Gawain does something no other challenger before him has attempted. He sheathes his blade. With deliberate calm, he recites the oath of the Round Table, the same vow spoken when Arthur first drew Excalibur from the stone. To protect the weak, to honor the land, to serve with compassion before glory. The specter's sword wavers. Gawain presses on, his voice gaining strength as he recounts the tale of Sir Pellinore, who once spared a rival's life, and in doing so, forged an alliance that saved a kingdom. The forest itself seems to lean closer, listening. The spectral knight's form flickers, its armor dissolving like smoke in sunlight. You remember, it whispers, and for a fleeting moment, the ghostly visage softens into something almost human. Then it's gone, leaving only the echo of its approval. The bridge, moments ago on the verge of collapse, steadies beneath Gawain's feet, the ropes knitting together as if touched by invisible hands. But the relief is short-lived. Beyond the ravine, the path forks violently, one bathed in golden light, the other swallowed by a mist that writhes like a living thing. The choice is stark. The sunlit trail promises safety, but the mist hums with a strange, familiar energy, as if the sword of virtue itself pulses somewhere within its depths. Gawain runs a hand over the hilt of his own sword, weighing instinct against wisdom. The light would be the sensible path, the knightly path, but legends are rarely forged in comfort. Somewhere in that mist, the whispers of prophecy still linger, tangled with the fate he's been chasing since he left Camelot's gates. The decision hangs before him, heavy as a storm cloud. And then, without a word, he steps into the mist, letting it swallow him whole. The forest sighs around him, and the last thing he hears before the silence closes in is the distant, silver chime of a stag's bell. The mist coils tighter around Gawain as he presses forward, the damp air clinging to his skin like a second cloak. Just when the path seems to dissolve entirely, the trees part to reveal a sight that stops him cold. A crumbling shrine, its stones veined with ivy, and kneeling before it, a maiden with silver hair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Her hands clutch an empty chalice, and when she turns at the sound of his approach, her eyes are twin pools of despair. "Please," she whispers, her voice frayed at the edges, "my village lies under a curse." The sorcerer Morgualt swore vengeance when we refused his dark gifts, and now the children fade with each sunset, their laughter stolen by his spell. Gawain's pulse quickens. The sword of virtue calls to him from somewhere deeper in the forest, its pull like a thread knotted around his ribs. Every instinct screams to press on the prophecy, the kingdom's fate, all hinge on his speed. But the maiden's grief is a weight he cannot ignore. He hesitates only a moment before crouching beside her, his gauntleted hand hovering above her trembling fingers. "Tell me what must be done." The maiden's breath hitches. She lifts the chalice, and as a single tear slips down her cheek, it strikes the metal with a sound like a struck bell. The droplet doesn't splash, it solidifies into a key of pure light, its edges humming with a melody Gawain last heard in Camelot's chapel. The forest seems to lean closer, the leaves rustling in a language just beyond understanding. A test, then, not of strength, but of allegiance, to the quest, or to the code that binds all knights of the Round Table. Gawain takes the key, and the moment his fingers close around it, the maiden's form shimmers like morning dew. Her sorrow melts into a smile, and where she knelt, a patch of white lilies bursts from the earth, their petals edged in gold. The shrine's cracked altar splits open, revealing a passage spiraling into the dark. Distantly, the spectral knight's mournful song echoes up from below, but beneath it, something new, a child's laugh, clear and bright as a spring brook. The curse is real, and the path to the sword of virtue, it seems, wins through the heart of a village salvation. Gawain descends without a word, the key's light guiding his steps. The air thickens with the scent of damp earth and something sharper ozone, like the moment before a storm. Behind him, the shrine's stone seal shut with a sigh, as if the forest itself has chosen its champion. Above, unseen, the silver stag watches, its antlers catching the first pale rays of dawn. The trial has begun in earnest, and the sword's true guardians are waiting. The village square lies unnaturally still, the thatched roofs sagging under the weight of unseen years, the cobblestones cracked with vines that slither like skeletal fingers. Gawain's breath catches as he steps past the first cottage's bodies slumped over half-eaten meals, a blacksmith's hammer frozen mid-strike. Even the birds in their cages turn to brittle statues. And at the center of it all, the sorcerer Morgualt lounges upon a throne of twisted roots, his grin a gash of yellowed teeth. "Ah, the famous Gawain," he croons, twirling a dagger between bony fingers. "Tell me, does Camelot teach its knights to abandon innocence? Leave now, and they wake. Stay, and their dreams become my feast." Gawain's sword hand twitches, but the sorcerer's words slither under his skin like poison. Every instinct screams to strike, until a flicker of movement catches his eye. The villagers' chests rise and fall in perfect unison, their breath sink to the rhythmic pulse of a shadowy sigil, etched into the ground beneath Morgualt's feet. Not sleep, then, a leash, The realization hits like cold water. This is no mere curse, but a snare laid by something far older, something that wears Morgualt's face as lightly as a mask. "I'll not barter steel for souls," Gawain growls, and with a voice that echoes with the weight of Avalon itself, he speaks Merlin's name. The air shatters. Morgualt's form ripples like a reflection in a disturbed pond, his flesh peeling away to reveal not a man, but a hollow thing of knotted shadows, its eyes voids that drink the light. The villagers convulse, their mouths stretching in silent screams as tendrils of darkness whip from their throats, recoiling toward the creature. Then, a touch. Small fingers clutch Gawain's cloak, and he looks down into the face of a child, her cheeks flushed with life amidst the grayscale ruin. Wordlessly, she presses a lily into his palm, its petals blazing with a radiance that makes the creature hiss and recoil. "The lady said you'd come," the girl whispers, and in her eyes, Gawain sees the reflection of a figure wreathed in mist. The Lady of the Lake, her hand outstretched as if offering the flower herself. The lily's light spreads like liquid dawn, racing along the sigil's cracks. Where it touches, the villagers gasp awake, the darkness sloughing off them like rotten silk. The creature howls, its form unraveling at the edges, but Gawain feels the truth in his bones. This isn't victory. The thing retreating into the forest is but a servant, and the sword of virtue awaits where the shadows are thickest. The child's grip tightens for a heartbeat before she vanishes, her laughter lingering like the chime of a silver bell. In Gawain's hand, the lily's stem hardens into a key, its teeth shaped like the antlers of a stag. The final door is opening, and beyond it, the sword sings. The lily's glow pulses like a heartbeat in Gawain's palm as he steps into the glade, where moonlight pools like liquid silver between the ancient oaks. The air here hums with a quiet power, the kind that settles in your bones and makes the hair on your arms rise. At the water's edge, the Lady of the Lake stands motionless, her gown woven from mist and starlight, her face both young and impossibly old. "You've walked far, Knight of Camelot," she murmurs, her voice the sound of a stream over smooth stones. But distance is not the true measure of a quest. "Tell me, when you grasp the sword of virtue, what will you see in its reflection? Your own glory, or the faces of those you swore to protect?" Gawain's throat tightens. The question cuts deeper than any blade, because the truth is, he's carried the weight of that doubt since leaving Camelot's gates. "My lady," he admits, his voice rough with honesty, "I fear not the forest shadows, but my own. What if I'm not worthy? What if Arthur's faith in me is misplaced?" The confession hangs between them, raw as an unbandaged wound. The lady's smile is gentle, but unyielding, like dawn breaking over a frozen lake. She lifts a hand, and the waters before her part with a sigh, revealing a hollow beneath the oldest oak, its roots cradling a bed of moss. 3 days, she says. 3 nights, fast, keep vigil, let the tree's roots judge what lies in your heart. As Gawain kneels in the hollow, the earth itself seems to breathe beneath him, the oak's bark pressing against his back like the hand of some ancient guardian. Night falls swiftly, and with it come the whispers. At first, they are soft, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl. Then they take shape, a voice like his father's, chiding him for hesitating in his first tournament. The laughter of Sir Lancelot, warm and teasing, but laced with the unspoken question, Will you ever truly be one of us? Worst of all, Arthur's voice, not angry, but weary. I trusted you, Gawain. The words twist like a knife. Shadows coil at the edges of his vision, forming shapes. A knight falling in battle because Gawain turned left instead of right. A village burning because he was too slow to ride. He clenches his fists, nails biting into his palms. These are phantoms, he knows, but the cruelest trials are the ones we bring with us. Somewhere above, the silver stag watches, its eyes reflecting the first pale streaks of morning. The night is long, and the whispers are just beginning. The third dawn bleeds pale light through the leaves, but Gawain's eyelids feel lined with lead. The whispers have gnawed at him all night, their accusations sharp as daggers' pride. Hisses the ghost of Sir Kay. You rode out not for Camelot, but to prove yourself worthy of a seat at the round table. His fingers tremble against the oak's roots, the bark now slick with dew, or perhaps his own sweat. Then the air curdles, and a figure steps from the shadows, its form shifting like smoke. Cloaked in a mantle stitched from battlefield banners, it extends a gauntleted hand. In its grip, the sword of virtue gleams flawless, radiant, no fasting. No trials, the figure murmurs, its voice a honeyed poison. Swear to me instead. A new king rises, one who rewards loyalty without conditions. Gawain's breath hitches. The offer hangs there, sweet as summer fruit. No more whispers, no more doubt, just power, clean and certain. For a heartbeat, he imagines it, riding back to Camelot with the sword unchallenged, Arthur's gratitude warm as sunlight. But then the vision twists, the round table cracked down the center, knights eyeing each other across the divide, trust unraveling thread by thread. His stomach clenches. A kingdom bought with broken oaths is no kingdom at all. He rasps, and with those words, the shadow recoils as if scalded. The false sword shatters like glass, and the oak behind him groans, a sound so deep it vibrates in Gawain's teeth. Wood splinters with a roar, the great tree splitting down the middle to reveal the true sword of virtue embedded in its heart. Yet as Gawain reaches for it, his blood turns to ice. A jagged fissure runs the length of the blade, spider webbing outward like a mirror struck by a hammer. The Lady of the Lake materializes beside him, her fingers brushing the crack. See how it bleeds, she whispers. The sword weeps droplets not of water, but of liquid gold, each one hissing as it strikes the earth. This is no enchantment. The fracture is Camelot's own. Gawain's throat tightens. He knows this wound, the quiet spite between Lancelot and Agravain, the way some knights now murmur of old grudges when Arthur's back is turned. Even his own restless heart, hungry for proof of his worth, the lady's gaze pins him. A thing broken by pride cannot be mended by pride, she says. The sword will heal only when a knight offers what he clings to most, not for glory, but because it is right. The weight of those words settles over Gawain like a shroud. Somewhere beyond the glade, a horn sounds, thin and desperate, the call of a patrol ambushed. The choice is here, now, and the sword's golden tears pool at his feet, reflecting not his face, but the faces of those who will suffer if he hesitates. The gates of Camelot rise before Gawain, their familiar ironwork, now twisted under the weight of a tension he can taste in the air, like the metallic tang before a storm. The courtyard, usually alive with the clatter of training swords and the laughter of pages, feels eerily still. Even the banners hang limp, their colors dulled by the absence of the usual wind. Inside the great hall, the round table stands fractured not in wood, but in spirit. Knights cluster in tight groups, their voices hushed but sharp, and at the center of it all, Mordred leans against Arthur's throne with a smirk that doesn't reach his cold eyes. The king's mercy has made us a jest, he's saying, fingers drumming the pommel of his dagger. While he frets over broken relics, our borders bleed. Arthur sits rigid, Excalibur across his knees, but his gaze is distant, fixed on the sword of virtue lying before him, its golden tear stains glinting in the torchlight. When Gawain steps forward, the king's relief is palpable, but so is the exhaustion. "You've returned," Arthur murmurs, clasping his shoulder, then quieter, "but the sword is wounded." As is my court. Gawain's chest tightens. He'd expected triumph, not this. Mordred's poison spreading like rot through the timbers of Camelot. The knight's eyes flicker between them, loyalty fraying at the edges. And then he understands. The lady's words weren't just about the sword, what you cling to most. His hand drifts to the hidden token at his belt, the one he's carried since boyhood. A sigil ring bearing the crest of Orkney, proof of the blood tie he's never dared name. Mordred's blood, his half-brother's, the hall seems to tilt. To speak it aloud would shatter the fragile respect he's earned, the hard-won trust of knights who have mocked Mordred's scheming for years. But the sword of virtue weeps gold at Arthur's feet, and the truth coils in Gawain's throat like a living thing. He steps forward, and the murmurs die. Drawing a breath that feels like his last, he unsheathes not his sword, but the ring, holding it high so the ruby catches the light. "There is a crack in this court deeper than any blades," he says, voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "And it begins with me." The confession spills forth his mother's secret marriage, the shared father, the lineage that binds him to the very man unraveling Camelot's peace. Gasps ripple through the hall. Mordred goes very still. Arthur's face is unreadable, but his knuckles whiten around Excalibur's hilt. For a heartbeat, Gawain fears he's only deepened the rift. Then, slowly, the king rises. "You kneel to confess this," he says quietly, "knowing what it costs you." Gawain doesn't hesitate. He sinks to one knee, the stone cold through his breeches. "I kneel to mend what I've hidden. If my honor is the price to seal this crack, let it be paid." The silence that follows is thicker than the forest of shadows mist. Then, a scrape of metal Lancelot's chair pushing back as he stands. "Well," he says, voice oddly gentle, "I suppose that makes two of us with inconvenient family." The joke lands like a lifeline. Percival barks a laugh, and just like that, the tension splinters. Mordred's snarl cuts through the easing air. "You think this changes anything?" "Blood doesn't make loyalty, Arthur. Weakness has enough." Arthur's voice cracks like a whip. For the first time in weeks, his shoulders straighten, the weight of kingship settling back where it belongs. He reaches down, lifting the sword of virtue, and where his fingers brush the fracture, the gold slows its weeping. A kingdom isn't forged by flawless men, but by those brave enough to show their cracks. His gaze finds Gawain's, and in it is a gratitude too vast for words. Beyond the high windows, the first true dawn in days breaks over Camelot, painting the fractured sword in light. It isn't whole, not yet, but for the first time, Gawain believes it can be. The moment Gawain's truth echoes through Camelot's hall, Mordred's face twists, not with guilt, but with something far darker, as though a mask has slipped to reveal the rot beneath. Without a word, he turns on his heel, his cloak whipping like a storm cloud as he vanishes through the arched doorway. The court erupts, but Gawain is already moving, his boots pounding the flagstones in pursuit. Lancelot catches his arm at the gates, his grip iron. "Let him go," he urges, eyes sharp with warning. "Chase him now, and you walk into his game." But Gawain shakes his head, the sword of virtue humming at his hip. "Some games must be played to the end," he says, and then he's riding into the gathering dusk, the wind carrying the scent of rain and old blood. The ruins rise from the moors like broken teeth, Mordred's ancestral fortress, a skeleton of blackened stone. Gawain dismounts at the crumbling gate, his breath fogging in the sudden chill. Inside, the air thrums with malice, the very walls whispering of betrayal centuries old. Mordred waits in the shattered throne room, his back to a stained glass window, cracked into a spiderweb of color. In his hands, a relic pulses a jagged shard of obsidian, its surface writhing with shadows. "You always were sentimental," he sneers, and with a flick of his wrist, he drives the shard into the floor. The ground heaves. From every crevice, wraiths pour forth, their forms stitched from the echoes of fallen knights, their hollow eyes fixed on Gawain. The sword of virtue leaps to his hand, its crack blazing gold as the first wraith strikes. Gawain parries, but the wraiths are endless, their touch sapping warmth, memory, hope. He fights not with fury, but with something quieter, the certainty of a man who has already chosen his price. As the curse coils around him, he does the unthinkable. He lowers his guard. The wraiths surge forward, their darkness pouring into the sword's fracture, drawn like poison from a wound. The blade shrieks, the gold brightening to white then, with a sound like a sigh, the crack seals. But victory has claws. The curse, denied its vessel in the sword, turns on Gawain instead. It begins at his fingertips, a creeping gray, the flesh hardening to unyielding stone. He staggers, the weight of it dragging him to one knee. Mordred laughs, the sound echoing through the ruins. "Look at you," he taunts, stepping closer. The perfect knight, finally as rigid as your morals. Yet as the stone climbs Gawain's wrist, something flickers in Mordred's eyes, not triumph, but a sliver of doubt. The wraiths still, the air stills, and in that breath between heartbeats, Gawain lifts his petrifying hand, not to strike, but to reach. "You're better than this," he rasps. "Orkney's blood is yours, but its shame doesn't have to be." Mordred recoils as if burned. For a heartbeat, the relics hold wavers, and in that space, the fortress itself seems to shudder, as though the stones remember the boy who once played in these halls, before betrayal was a language he spoke. Then the moment shatters. Mordred snarls, wrenching the obsidian shard free, and the storm of wraiths howls back to life. But the sword of virtue is whole now, its light a beacon in the dark. And though Gawain's limbs grow heavier with every passing second, he rises. The curse will take him, but not before the sword's work is done. The wraiths dissolve like smoke in a sudden wind, their shrieks fading into silence as Mordred crumples to his knees. His fingers scrape against the cracked floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Before him, Gawain stands frozen in stone up to his chest, the sword of virtue still clutched in his petrified grip, its light the only warmth in the ruined hall. Mordred's shoulders shake, not with rage, but with something raw and broken. Why, he chokes out, staring at his own reflection in the sword's gleaming surface. You could have struck me down, you should have. A gust of wind stirs the dust as Lancelot bursts through the crumbling archway, his armor streaked with ash, a crystal vial clutched in his hand. Inside, water from the Lady of the Lake swirls with flecks of silver, alive with a power that makes the air hum. He skids to a halt, taking in the scene. The sword whole, Gawain half lost to stone, Mordred broken at his feet. His voice is hoarse. The lady sent me, she said. There's a choice. The vial glimmers as he holds it aloft. This can undo the curse, Lancelot murmurs, but the magic has a price. Pour it over Gawain, and he lives, but the sword of virtue shatters beyond repair. Leave him as he is, and the sword's power guards Camelot forever. His grip tightens. The choice is yours, Mordred. For once in your life, choose something beyond yourself. The silence stretches, thin as ice over a pond. Then, movement. A twitch of Gawain's stone fingers, so slight it could be a trick of the light, but the sword's glow pulses in response, casting shadows that twist like living things. Mordred's breath hitches. He reaches out, his hand hovering over Gawain's frozen wrist, close enough to feel the cold radiating from the stone. Somewhere beyond the ruins, a lark sings, a single piercing note. Mordred's fingers curl into a fist. All my life, he whispers, I've been told I was born from betrayal, that blood is destiny. His other hand rises, trembling, toward the vial. But you kneel to a king who isn't your blood, for a kingdom that would have cast you out if they knew the truth. A tear splashes onto the floor, mixing with the dust. Why, Gawain's hand twitches again, not toward the sword, toward the vial. Lancelot's jaw clenches. He's choosing, he says softly. Even now, Mordred lets out a sound like a wounded animal. In one swift motion, he snatches the vial, uncorks it, and freezes. The liquid inside swirls, showing fleeting glimpses. Arthur at the round table, his face lined with grief. A village child placing a lily on a stone knight's pedestal. The Lady of the Lake, her eyes full of sorrow. And finally, Gawain himself, standing whole in Camelot's courtyard, the sword of virtue reduced to shards at his feet. Mordred's fingers tighten. Then, with a shuddering breath, he turns the vial upside down over the sword. The water strikes the blade with a sound like a bell tolling midnight. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then light, a radiance so blinding it sears the eyes, bursting from the sword's core as the stone encasing Gawain cracks, like an eggshell. He gasps, collapsing forward as the petrification recedes, his skin flushing with life. Behind him, the sword of virtue trembles, and with a sigh, it dissolves into a shower of golden sparks, each one winking out like dying stars. Mordred sags, empty vial slipping from his fingers. You were right, he rasps to Gawain. Blood isn't destiny, his laugh is hollow, but you've doomed us all the same. Lancelot catches Gawain as he stumbles, but Gawain's eyes are fixed on the space where the sword once lay. The air smells of rain and wet earth, as though the land itself is weeping. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls soft but unmistakable. A storm is coming, and Camelot's greatest protection is gone. The hall holds its breath as the last traces of stone melt from Gawain's skin, the golden light of the sword of virtue flickering like a dying candle in his grip. For a heartbeat, the court dares to hope, until Mordred moves like a shadow unspooling, snatching the blade from his weakened fingers. The clash of steel rings out as guards rush forward, but it's too late. Mordred vanishes into the storm-lashed night, the sword's fading glow swallowed by the darkness beyond Camelot's gates. Arthur's voice cuts through the chaos, not with fury, but with a quiet that chills deeper than any winter wind. If that blade reaches our enemies' hands, it won't be metal they wield against us. It'll be the broken faith of the Round Table itself. Gawain sways where he stands, his legs still numb from the curse's grip, his palms raw where the stone cracked away. Yet when the king turns to name the knights who will ride, it's Gawain who steps forward first. "With your leave," he murmurs, and the words cost him more than any wound. This isn't the bold demand of a hero, it's the offering of a man who's learned the weight of his own pride. The court watches, struck silent by the change in him, the way his shoulders bow not with defeat, but with the burden of knowing exactly what he risks. Lancelot's hand closes around his forearm, steadying him. "You're in no state to ride," he mutters, but Gawain shakes his head. "It's because I'm not that I must." The truth hangs between them, unspoken. Mordred's escape isn't just about the sword. It's about the crack in Camelot's foundation, the one Gawain's confession laid bare. Who better to mend it than the knight who helped break it? Arthur exhales, his breath stirring the torchlight. "Go," he says at last, but not alone. The king's gaze sweeps the hall, lingering on the faces of those who have whispered against Gawain, those who have doubted. Let every man who rides tonight remember, we chase not just steel, but the soul of this kingdom. And souls are heavier to carry. The company departs under a sky bruised with clouds, Gawain's horse lagging a half step behind the others. His body protests every jolt of the saddle, but his mind is clear as the first frost. Mordred will be heading for the Black Cliffs, where the sea gnaws at the land like a starving beast. It's the one place where oaths and blades can be bargained away without the weight of prying eyes. The wind carries the salt sting of the distant waves, and with it, something else, the faint, discordant chime of the sword's dying light, calling like a wounded thing. Gawain grits his teeth and urges his mount faster. Somewhere ahead, Mordred rides with vengeance in his heart and the fractured legacy of Camelot in his hands. But this time, Gawain follows not for glory, not for absolution, but because the quietest battles are often the ones that echo loudest. And the true test of a knight isn't how he wields a sword, but how he carries the cost of laying it down. The storm howls like a wounded beast as Gawain's horse stumbles to a halt at the cliff's edge, its hooves skidding on rain-slicked rock. Below, the sea claws at the shore with white-tipped fingers, and there, silhouetted against the lightning-lashed sky, Mordred stands with his back to the abyss, the sword of virtue cradled in his arms like a stolen child. Its glow is sickly now, pulsing green gold where Mordred's fingers clutch the hilt, the crack in the blade weeping shadows that twist like living smoke. Between them, a dozen Viking raiders shift uneasily, their axes glinting as they eye the sword with a mix of greed and dread. Their leader, a bear of a man with a braided beard, salted with sea spray, extends a calloused hand. The bargain stands, princeling, he growls, the blade for safe passage north? Or do you fear your king's justice more than our hospitality? Mordred's laugh is a blade's edge drawn too fast from its sheath, sharp, reckless. Oh, I've no fear of Arthur, he sneers, but his gaze flicks to Gawain as he steps forward, and in that unguarded moment, the truth flickers. He's terrified. Not of punishment, but of the hollowness in his own chest, where the sword's corruption has taken root. Gawain doesn't draw his weapon. The wind tears at his cloak as he raises empty hands, the storm's fury echoing the tempest in his ribs. Brother, he shouts over the gale, and the word lands like a stone in still water. Mordred flinches. The raiders stiffen, sensing a shift in the air. You think this will fill the void that blade only takes. It doesn't give. A wave crashes against the cliffs below, spraying them with icy brine. Gawain presses on, his voice raw. I know what it's like to hunger for something you can't name, but this isn't the way. For a heartbeat, Mordred's grip on the sword slackens. The raider leader snarls and lunges, his axe arcing toward Mordred's exposed side, but Gawain moves faster. He tackles Mordred aside, the axe biting into rock where they'd stood. The impact sends the sword of virtue spinning from Mordred's grasp. It clatters toward the cliff's edge, teetering for one impossible second before vanishing into the roaring dark below. The raiders howl. Mordred gasps, his eyes wide as if waking from a dream. The sword's absence leaves a silence louder than the storm, and in that silence, Gawain sees it, the boy he once sparred with in Camelot's courtyards, before pride turned to poison. He grips Mordred's shoulder. Come home, he says, simple as a prayer. Lightning splits the sky, illuminating the choice written on Mordred's face. The pull of old wounds or the fragile hope of something new. The raiders close in, their axes raised, but the sea answers first. A wave taller than a castle wall surges up the cliffs, scattering them like driftwood. When the water recedes, only Gawain and Mordred remain, kneeling on the sodden rock, the taste of salt and second chances thick on their tongues. Somewhere in the depths, the sword of virtue sinks, its light guttering like a drowned star. But the weight lifting from Mordred's shoulders, that's something no tide can wash away. The raider's spear strikes like a bolt of lightning, splitting the storm's roar with the sickening crunch of steel-piercing flesh. Gawain staggers, the world tilting as the pain blooms hot and sudden beneath his ribs, yet his arms stay locked around Mordred, shoving him clear of the next swinging axe. Blood slicks the rain-slicked rock beneath them, swirling in the cracks like liquid rust. Mordred's face is a mask of disbelief. No one has ever taken a blow for him before. The raiders howl in triumph, closing in, their weapons hungry. Then the sea stills, not gradually, but all at once, as if the world itself has drawn breath. The waves freeze mid-crash, their crests glinting like shattered glass. From the unnatural calm, a figure rises water, cascading from her silver robes, the Lady of the Lake, stepping onto the cliff, as though it were an altar. In her hands, the sword of virtue gleams, whole once more, its blade shimmering with a light that seems to pulse in time with Gawain's labored breaths. She doesn't speak to him. Instead, she turns to Mordred, her gaze stripping away every lie he's ever told himself. You think yourself unworthy to hold this, she murmurs, her voice the hush of tide over sand. But virtue isn't the absence of shadows, it's the choice to face them. The sword's hilt presses into Mordred's shaking palms, its weight startlingly warm. For a heartbeat, he hesitates, his fingers curling as if around a serpent. Then the first raider lunges, and instinct takes over. The sword of virtue sings as it meets the axe's edge, the impact sending a shockwave of golden light rippling through the air. The raiders reel back, shielding their eyes as the blade's radiance sears away the storm's gloom. Mordred moves like a man possessed, not with the practiced grace of a knight, but with the raw, untamed fury of someone who has nothing left to lose. Every parry, every strike is clumsy with desperation, yet the sword guides him, its light weaving through his movements like a second heartbeat. And Gawain. He watches from his knees, blood slicking his teeth as he grins, not at the victory, but at the sight of Mordred's face, no longer twisted with bitterness, but alight with something dangerously close to hope. The last raider falls, his weapon clattering onto the rocks, and the lady's voice whispers once more on the wind. A sword reforged is stronger than one never broken. The waves return then, crashing against the cliffs with renewed fury, as if the sea itself is applauding. Mordred stands panting, the sword's glow fading to a gentle hum against his chest. He doesn't offer it back, not yet. Instead, he reaches for Gawain, hauling him upright with a grip that trembles not from weakness, but from the weight of a debt he doesn't know how to name. The wound in Gawain's side burns, but the look in Mordred's eyes, that's a balm deeper than any magic. Somewhere in the distance, the silver stag lifts its head, its antlers catching the first true light of dawn. The storm has passed, but the reckoning is just beginning. The great hall of Camelot has never been so silent. Every knight, every squire, even the torches lining the walls seem to hold their breath as Mordred kneels before the throne, the sword of virtue laid across his outstretched palms like an offering, or a plea. The blade's light flickers weakly, its glow dimmed by the weight of all that's past. Arthur's face is unreadable as he rises, the creak of his armor the only sound in the cavernous space. He doesn't reach for the sword, not yet. Instead, his gaze lingers on the scrapes and bruises marking Mordred's hands, the torn cloak still damp with seawater. These aren't the wounds of a traitor fleeing justice. They're the marks of a man who's fought his way back. You returned, Arthur says at last, his voice softer than anyone expected. The words aren't an accusation. They're an acknowledgement, heavy with the unspoken truth. Mordred could have vanished into the night, could have sold the sword, or shattered it, or let the sea claim it forever. But he didn't. The king's fingers close around the hilt, and as he lifts it, the blade's light strengthens just a little, as if recognizing its true master. Your title is forfeit, Arthur continues, and though his tone is firm, there's no cruelty in it. But your life is your own. Prove to this court, prove to yourself, that you're more than the sum of your worst choices. A murmur ripples through the assembled knights. Some nod, their expressions grudging but accepting. Others, Agravain chief among them, glower, their hands straying to their sword hilts. It's Gawain who breaks the tension, pushing forward from where he's been leaning against a pillar, his bandaged side protesting with every step. Then let him start by riding with me, he says, and the hall falls still again. Even Mordred looks up, shock written plain across his face. Gawain meets his brother's gaze without flinching. The northern villages still whisper of spectral knights, haunting the old roads. Let us face them together, not as prince and outcast, but as men who have learned the cost of pride. The proposal hangs in the air, daring someone to challenge it. To everyone's surprise, it's Lancelot who speaks first. And why stop at two? He steps forward, his grin sharp as a dagger's edge. I've a mind to see how Mordred fares when he's not busy stabbing us in the back. The jab lacks malice, and the chuckle that follows is enough to loosen the tension coiled in the room. Arthur's smile is faint, but unmistakable as he surveys his knights. A fellowship, then, not of the round table, but of the road. His eyes find Mordred's. You'll earn no titles, no lands, only the chance to walk a different path. For the first time since childhood, Mordred's mask slips, not into anger, not into sneering defiance, but into something raw and fragile. Hope. It's there in the way his fingers flex against his thighs, the way his breath catches just slightly. He doesn't bow, doesn't swear oaths he's not sure he can keep. He simply meets Arthur's gaze and nods once, and in that nod, Camelot's future shifts. The torches flare brighter, as if sensing the change, and somewhere beyond the castle walls, the silver stag lifts its head to the wind, scenting the dawn of something new. Months blur together in the quiet corners of Camelot's training yards, where dawn finds Gawain and Mordred sparring not with swords, but with words, lessons woven into the rhythm of their strikes. A knight's strength, Gawain pants, blocking a blow aimed at his ribs, isn't measured by how hard he swings, but by when he chooses not to. Mordred's answering smirk lacks its old venom. Progress, perhaps, yet the castle walls have ears, and the whispers slither through the halls like winter drafts. Why does the king's nephew train the disgraced prince? What secrets do they share? Even Lancelot watches from the shadows, his expression unreadable. The feast night arrives draped in false merriment, the great hall ablaze with torchlight and the clatter of goblets. Arthur sits enthroned at the high table, his laughter warm as summer ale, until a servant slips forward, bearing a chalice crusted with rubies the color of drying blood. The king reaches for it, but Gawain's hand clamps down on his wrist. A memory flashes, an old tale told by Sir Ector of a southern assassin who steeped his poison in gem dust to mask its scent. Without a word, Gawain hurls the chalice to the stones, where it shatters in a burst of acrid smoke. The hall erupts. In the chaos, Agravain's chair scrapes back. His face, usually a mask of smug indifference, twists with something raw. You always were too clever for your own good. He snarls at Gawain, but his eyes flick to Mordred, his pupil long before Gawain took up the mantle. The truth crashes over the room like a wave. The whispers, the poisoned cup, the way Agravain's fingers had lingered too long on Mordred's shoulder earlier that evening, murmuring words no one else could hear. Arthur's voice cuts through the din, colder than the wind off the northern moors. You would use my own blood as your blade. The accusation isn't aimed at Mordred, but the damage is done. Mordred's face drains of color, his fists clenched so tight, the scars on his palms split anew. The betrayal isn't just Agravain's. It's the realization that his mentor saw him not as a man to redeem, but as a weapon to point at the king's heart. Gawain steps between them, his own heart hammering. This isn't the battlefield he'd prepared for. The wounds here won't heal with bandages or salves. Agravain's laugh is a brittle thing as the guards seize him. You think this ends with me? He spits, and the look he shoots Mordred is worse than any poison. Some stains don't wash out, boy. The feast ends not with song, but with silence. Mordred stands motionless amid the wreckage of the shattered cup, the shards glinting like accusations at his feet. Gawain reaches for him, then stops. There are no words for this. Some lessons must be learned alone. Beyond the windows, the first snow of winter begins to fall, muffling the world in white, as if even the land itself is holding its breath. The wind howls through the ruins like a chorus of lost souls, as Gawain and Mordred dismount at the broken gates of the fallen castle. The stones here are blackened by old fires, the air thick with the scent of damp rot, and something sharper sulfur, perhaps, or the lingering taint of dark magic. Agravain stands atop a crumbling parapet, his silhouette stark against the storm-washed sky, his cloak billowing like a banner of defiance. Below him, a dozen armored figures shift in the shadows, knights stripped of their sigils, their faces gaunt with hunger and old hatred. You always did have a talent for dramatic entrances, Mordred calls up, his voice steady, but his fingers flex at his sides, restless as a drawn bowstring. Agravain's laughter is a blade dragged over stone, and you, nephew, have a talent for picking the losing side. His gaze flicks to Gawain, cold with calculation. Tell me, does it weigh on you, knowing Arthur would have cast you out too, if he'd known your bloodline sooner? The words are meant to cut, but Gawain doesn't flinch. He's carried that particular shadow too long to let it rule him now. Instead, he steps forward, his boots crunching over shattered masonry. This ends here, Agravain. No more whispers, no more daggers in the dark. For a heartbeat, the only sound is the distant rumble of thunder. Then Agravain spreads his arms, his voice dropping to a chant that prickles the skin like static. The ground shudders, the ruins groan, and with a sound like the world splitting, the tower behind him collapses inward, a tidal wave of stone and dust surging toward them. Mordred moves faster than thought. His shoulder slams into Gawain's ribs, hurling them both clear as the avalanche crashes down where they'd stood. The impact sends Gawain skidding across the rubble, his vision swimming. When it clears, the dust is so thick he can barely see his own hands. Mordred, the name tears from his throat, raw as an open wound. No answer. He staggers to his feet, his pulse a drumbeat of dread, and then he sees it. A flash of scarlet fabric beneath a slab of fallen masonry. Mordred's arm, outstretched as if still pushing Gawain to safety, lies motionless. The rest of him is buried, somewhere beyond the settling dust. Agravain's laughter fades into the storm, his footsteps retreating with the surviving traitors. But Gawain doesn't hear it. All he hears is the silence where his brother's breath should be. The first handfuls of rubble come away with frantic haste, his fingers bleeding against the sharp edges. The stones are too heavy, the pile too deep. A sob claws its way up his throat, half rage, half prayer, when a shadow falls across him. Lancelot, his armor streaked with mud from hard riding, drops to his knees without a word and begins digging. One by one, others appear. Percival, his massive shoulders straining. Kay, his usual sneer replaced by grim determination. Even the village blacksmith's son, his hands still blistered from forging their swords. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. Then a cough, a shift in the rubble, and a hand, streaked with dirt and blood, grasping blindly upward. Gawain's breath stops. Somewhere beneath the wreckage, Mordred lives. The realization hits like dawn, breaking after the longest night. But the tower's wreckage groans ominously, and the first cold drops of rain begin to fall. Time is the enemy now, and Agravain's trail grows colder with every passing second. The night stretches endlessly as Gawain claws at the rubble, his fingers raw and slick with blood. Each stone he flings aside feels heavier than the last, his muscles screaming in protest, but he doesn't stop. The storm rages around him, rain turning the debris into a treacherous slurry, yet the only sound he hears is the ragged rhythm of his own breath, and beneath it, the faint, wheezing gasp of Mordred trapped somewhere in the wreckage. "Hold on," Gawain growls through gritted teeth, though he doesn't know if his brother can hear him. The beam pinning Mordred is massive, its weight beyond what any man could lift, but Gawain throws his shoulder against it anyway, his boots slipping in the mud. A groan cuts through the darkness, not Mordred's, but Agravain's. The traitor lies sprawled nearby, his fine cloak sodden with rain and blood, his face ashen in the flickering torchlight. His lips twist into a grimace that might have been a smirk in another life. "You always saw him wrong," he rasps, his voice thin as a frayed thread. "Not my pawn." Never that. A cough racks his body, and when he speaks again, the words are laced with bitter awe. The villages, the ones Arthur's taxes bled dry. Who do you think smuggled them grain? Who turned a blind eye when rebels fled? His fingers scrabble at the ground, clutching at nothing. The boy had a talent for mercy. Hated that most about him. Gawain freezes. The revelation lands like a blow, reshaping every suspicion, every harsh word exchanged between him and Mordred. All this time, the shadows they fought weren't just Agravain's. They were the ones Mordred cast himself, deliberately, to hide the kindnesses that would have marked him weak in his mentor's eyes. The beam above Mordred creaks, its weight shifting as if stirred by an unseen hand. Then light, not the harsh glare of torches, but the soft, gold-pink glow of dawn spilling over the ruined stones. The rain slows, then stops, and in the sudden stillness, the beam lifts not by human strength, but by something older, quieter. The lady's work, perhaps, or the land itself offering a sliver of grace. Mordred gasps as the pressure releases, his chest rising in a shuddering breath, his eyes fluttering open to meet Gawain's. There's no triumph in his gaze, only weary understanding. The truth is out now, and the weight of it hangs between them, heavier than any stone. Agravain's final exhale whispers through the ruins, his body going slack. The first bird of morning trills somewhere in the distance, its song piercing and clear. Mordred tries to speak, but Gawain shakes his head, pressing a hand to his brother's shoulder. No words are needed. The dawn has broken, and with it, something else, the last lie that ever stood between them. The hall of Camelot glows brighter than it has in years, every torch blazing as if the very stones have caught fire with joy. The air hums with the low, resonant notes of the bard's harp, and the scent of fresh cut rosemary and beeswax candles weaves through the crowd. At the center of it all stands Mordred, not cloaked in shadows as he once was, but bathed in the golden light, streaming through the high-stained glass windows. His tunic is simple, unadorned, no sigils, no armor, just the raw, unvarnished truth of who he's become. Arthur's voice rings out, clear as a struck bell. as he lowers the ceremonial sword onto Mordred's shoulders. By the trials you've endured and the grace you've shown, I name you Knight of Camelot anew. The words settle like a benediction, and for the first time in his life, Mordred doesn't flinch at the weight of them. Then Gawain steps forward, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving his brother's face. In his hands rests a dagger, not some gleaming relic, but the first blade Mordred ever held, the one he'd stolen as a boy from the armory, its edge nicked from clumsy practice swings. Now, reforged and polished, it gleams with a quiet dignity. The word, redeemed, is etched along the fuller, the letters catching the light like a promise. Gawain doesn't speak as he offers it. He doesn't need to. The gesture says everything. The past isn't erased, but transformed. Arthur raises his hands, and the hall falls still. Today marks more than a knighting, he declares, his gaze sweeping over the faces of farmers, merchants, and nobles alike. It marks the dawn of an age where the strength of Camelot lies not in a single blade or throne, but in the hands of those who uphold its ideals. With a nod, the sword of virtue is brought forth, not to be enshrined above a ruler's seat, but placed upon a simple wooden stand at the heart of the courtyard, where any may approach it. Let it be a reminder, Arthur continues, his voice softening, that virtue is not the domain of kings alone, but of every soul who chooses to wield it. The crowd murmurs, awed, but Mordred's attention is elsewhere. His fingers trace the dagger's inscription, his throat tight. This is the true magic. He realizes not the grand gestures, but the quiet reckonings, the moments when the world offers you a second chance, and you find, to your own surprise, that you've grown worthy of it. Outside, the first petals of spring drift through the open gates, carried on a wind that smells of rain and renewal. The stag watches from the forest's edge, its antlers tipped with sunlight, and for once, no one is afraid of what the future holds. The salt-kissed wind carries the scent of memory as Gawain's boots sink into the damp sand of Avalon's shore. His bones ache with the weight of years, but his steps are light, as if the very earth cradles him. The mist here moves like a living thing, curling around his ankles like an old friend. Somewhere beyond the veil, voices echo Lancelot's booming laugh, Arthur's measured tones, the raucous jests of knights, whose faces he can still see as clearly as the day they rode out together. Time has softened their edges in his mind, sanded down the quarrels and sharp words, leaving only the warmth of shared purpose. A wave rolls in, its foam lacing the shore with silver, and for a heartbeat, the mist parts. There, amid the reeds, stands the silver stag, its antlers gilded by the low sun, its eyes holding the same knowing glint they did decades ago on that first fateful quest. Gawain doesn't startle. He's learned that some things in life aren't meant to be chased, only witnessed. The stag dips its head, and the air hums with a melody Gawain last heard in Camelot's chapel, the day Mordred knelt to receive his restored title. He always thought legends were carved in stone or sung in grand halls, but here, at the edge of the world, he understands the truth. They're written in the quiet choices no bard bothers to name. The bread shared with a starving villager, the hand extended to an enemy who could have been a brother, the moment a sword was laid down instead of wielded. The mist thickens and the stag turns, its form blending into the haze. Gawain follows without hesitation, his breath steady. The tide swirls around his knees, cool and insistent, but he feels no fear. only a curious lightness, as if the years are shedding from him like old armor. Somewhere ahead, a voice whispers not the lady's, but Mordred's, young and unburdened, calling his name with the easy affection of their earliest days. The water rises, the mist closes in, and Gawain laughs, because of course it would end like this, not with a battle cry, but with the quiet certainty of a man who's learned that every ending is just a new kind of beginning. The last thing he sees is the stag's antlers catching the light one final time before the horizon swallows them both, and then only the sea, the sky, and the stories left to tell.